All right, what's up? We are here with a fresh episode of Talking Shizzle. And today I'm really excited to meet my new friend, Lisa Wendland. She is a life cycle marketer. And this is a topic we haven't gotten into yet. So I'm really excited today to really break down what life cycle marketing is, how to do it well, what mistakes, people often make and all that good stuff. So welcome Lisa to the show. It's good to have you.
Thanks so much, Taylor. Super excited to be here.
Tell us a little bit about you first before we get into the meat of the discussion today. Who's Lisa? And tell us a little bit about Blue Wheel, where you lead lifecycle marketing.
Yeah, you bet. So it's great to be here. I am the Director of Lifecycle here at Blue Wheel Media. I've actually been at Blue Wheel for a little over 3 years. My experience includes about 15 years of digital, looking at the e-commerce space and working with nonprofits, higher ed, and just across the number of different industries. So my experience is about 10 years on the agency side and about 5 years on the brand side.
Okay. Okay, cool. And okay, well, tell me a little bit about that. What was it like switching from brand to agency for you? I've like bounced back and forth over my career, so I'm curious kind of what that transition was like for you.
Yeah. So there's definitely a different dynamic when you're working on the brand side. And I think having worked on both and being able to see both perspectives has helped because I can understand a little bit more on how to scale and work through processes and automate some things that are kind of repetitive. There's definitely when you're on the brand side, you can be nimble in a different way than you can on the agency side. So on the agency side, you have information across all the different brands and you can see the high level trends. So for example, Blue Whale is 60% beauty brands that we work with. And so if you are working on any particular brand at any given time, you can see the way that metrics are going. You can see where there's fatigue after a heavy sale period across the board. You can see deliverability issues, a number of clients having issues with maybe deliverability in Gmail due to some rule change. Whereas when you're on the client side or brand side, you don't necessarily have that information unless you're working with a network, working with an agency, or really friendly with a number of other brands to understand, what are some of the challenges that we're all facing together.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of my favorite things about being an agency and being in the agency is like you do get a different vantage point in a way where you're looking at a larger scale and like big picture. So let's approach this conversation today kind of from that perspective. And let's really break down life cycle marketing. We've been talking about different asset like areas of marketing on the show a lot, breaking things down. Recently we had an episode on ABM. We've talked about go to market, and there's all these different areas of marketing. So let's first define for people listening, what do you think life cycle marketing is
Ooh, great
versus
question.
just marketing?
Yes. So life cycle marketing is really focused on the pieces that go into the life cycle of the customer, right? So you have someone that's identified a problem, and so now they're on the internet and they're looking for a solution, or they're asking their friends, or they're trying to figure this thing out. Then you have the people that are like, "Yep, this is the thing I need." So they've gone to the site, they've checked out the site, now they've put it in the
Mhm.
cart. Now they're hopefully purchasing, and then maybe it's a replenishable product, a product that would add on, a product with a new version, like maintaining a relationship there on how they might use it again in the future, or again, like there's a replenishable aspect where you have to add to it. So in life cycle terms, we're looking at all the points that go along with that. So if they're doing their research, we're really looking for opportunities to get them to the site so that we can understand them better and collect their first party data, where it's email address, phone number, those sorts of things, to just say, okay, they've came to the site, and tag them on where they came from. Maybe it was Facebook, maybe it was a Google ad, and then nurture that relationship from there, right, through the full life cycle. So sending them information that would educate them better or give them more brand awareness, like pick us because of this. And then if they haven't purchased yet, what is the missing information you need? Is it a discount? Is it, what is that point of resistance? And then following up, you could expect to use all of this up by this time, or hey, people who liked this also liked this other product, learn more about us. So really that one-to-one communication in channels like
Mhm.
email and SMS. And then also that next level of like loyalty, add-on products, like subscription, those sorts of things all fall within life cycle.
Yeah, I love that. I love breaking it down like that. It's really interesting because yesterday we were talking before we started recording about brand, and then we were also talking about just like, we kind of do different things than you do. And yesterday I was giving a presentation on brand, but also then talking with people afterwards about the difference between brand and marketing. And it's like a lot of what you just said, it's like that regular ongoing conversation, when it comes to like someone decided to stop scrolling when they saw your brand, now
Yep,
they're interacting and now it's like that regular conversation. And so you
absolutely.
mentioned SMS and email are like kind of what you would call the core platforms, you think, for lifecycle marketing. Are there any others that people are, exploring these days that you think are interesting or like, popping out?
Yes, absolutely. I'm glad you asked that because it really depends on the brand and what their appetite is for a number, like to manage so many platforms. And this is where,
Mm,
it helps to have support. But there is a space where chatbots are growing. Where so now, if you're looking for information, the little bot pops up and there's mixed reactions from consumers. But I think the main takeaway is if it's conversational and it gives them the answer they're looking for and it doesn't feel cold, like there's an opportunity to automate messaging in there. I mean, it's really what
mm.
lifecycle and SMS, or sorry, email and SMS covers as well, right? They're based on behaviors. We are following up with you with that sort of information. So you can apply that to a chatbot. There's a number of brands I've worked with where we've completely revamped all of their app communication. So think like smart
Mhm.
devices, health gizmos, those sorts of
Mhm.
things. So
Yeah.
if you are on your journey and you've hit this milestone, then the app will send a notification. So that's another channel that we absolutely dive into.
Do you have a favorite channel? Like you personally, you've been doing this for a long time. I'm curious if you've got a favorite channel.
That's tough. I think it depends on what's the best fit for the brand. There are some brands that absolutely
Mhm,
crush it with an app and they have that immersive experience. And you, with your background in branding, it's like you could probably feel that, right? Like it's like, nope, this is
mhm.
home. This is where, you can really dive in and feel like you're part of this. I also, I would, so that's only for some brands. I've seen some brands that do really well with SMS, but I would say email, between email and app, it's tough because I feel like with app, there's a different level of data than there is with email. Email, you still have
Yeah.
some things you have to rely on, custom UTM tags, or, you're at the mercy of Gmail, right? And whether or not you get to the inbox.
Mhm.
There's obviously a lot of like triage that we do to help brands stay in the inbox. But yeah, I would say there are pros and cons between email and apps. And I think at the end of the day, more brands are using email where I could see it go to the next level and we could really make an impact.
Yeah. Okay, what you're talking about when it comes to apps made me think a little bit about communities. Would
Mhm.
you put, because the emergence of online communities seems to really be growing as well, would you put those in the life cycle marketing bucket, or do you think those are a little bit different?
Good question. As a professor, so I'm also a professor. I didn't mention that in my intro. I am actually working on specific courses at the university level, like in curriculum, where we're examining how brands are using social. And I would say that while like there's two pieces. So for life cycle, getting people to that community, that would be, I feel like there's a couple of
Mhm.
facets. It's like I'm trying to think of a nice folded dessert, right? Where you have, like
Like a
we have a
crêpe
we
or a cake, a crêpe or a layer cake?
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to think of the name of it. We have we worked with this fantastic global hair care brand, and they have a huge community, and they're really leaning into that, like on Facebook, right? They have this great community.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
within the welcome series, we have an email that sends people, like there's actually multiple touches that are, get into the community, be part of that. You will find what you
Yeah.
need, and you'll love it. And then they have that affinity. But once you're in the community, I would almost fall like that would fall under social for me because you're it's a different dashboard, it's a different set of metrics. You don't have that same I don't feel like you have the same level of granular, data. If somebody clicked a specific link
Uh-huh.
within an email, I have that. There, to be fair, there's a ton of data from those groups, and I've seen some brands use it really well. Um, but yeah, I would put that more under social. It definitely falls into the life cycle of a customer, but I just don't see the data executed on where, I can't tie that back to like a Klaviyo or a Marsis where it says, oh, this
Yeah.
person's super active in the group, right? You probably have to more
Mhm.
manually think about here's our VIPs and then tag them and then watch the data that way.
Okay. I think that makes a lot of sense. So, like, as we think about life cycle, think about it a little bit more of like, what are these specific touch points where you're trying to push someone like to do a thing, maybe to the next level, versus communities, whether you're doing something on Circle or Mighty Networks or Facebook
Yeah.
groups or whatever it is, that's
Yeah.
more of a social engagement space versus, "Hey, you left this in your cart. Do you wanna finish that order?" type stuff. So when we're thinking about life cycle, it's more the, "Hey, you left this in your cart" type communication.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good separation sort of because it does require more community engagement. Now, what people could reply to SMS and emails, and then that goes over to
Yeah,
the customer service team. So it's
yeah,
like another group again.
yeah. Okay, okay, cool. So I by the way, I love this podcast because I learn a lot from other marketers, like, in areas of marketing where I'm like, "Yeah, I don't actually do that much of that, like, that's not my thing." So I love
Sure.
these types of conversations because it pulls out so much of the, "But what does that really mean?" type
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
let's get into, you know? Yeah, I love it, I love it. So let's get into there's a couple of topics I wanna go into next. One in particular is how do you balance personalization and efficiency? And then after that, I wanna talk about, like, how do you keep the momentum going, particularly in, like, off seasons or, like, we just had a really weird I've been thinking about this a lot lately. The end of 2024 with the political cycle, with the just the holidays, like, it felt, I think, for a lot of brands, like a really weird Q4. So I wanna talk
Mm.
about sort of, like, keeping momentum up, but let's first go with, like, okay, everyone says personalize, segment, 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 personalize, 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 and then that can feel all of a sudden like I wanna pull all of my hair out. How do you do it?
No, I mean, and that's why I work with brands, right? Because we all know, maybe not we all know, but I would say a good example of bad personalization or bad use of data, let's say you go to the same grocery store every week. It's the same people working. It's the same stuff on the shelves. You have a routine, but no one's acknowledging that you've been there before, that they've checked out with you, like you know what I mean? Like it's just like if it's completely
Mhm.
cut off and you feel like you're just going through the motions, it's very easy on the virtual side to feel like that, right? Like, okay, like I'm just
Yeah,
going through the motions. What wows people are the brands that recognize and acknowledge, oh, you've been here before. Oh, did we help you solve like you remember above and beyond customer
yeah,
service. And so with email, it's very easy to do that. And you mentioned pulling out your hair. Like it is definitely easier than it is offline. I have to say, because you
mhm,
you have all this machine learning where the data is there within the profile to say, Taylor's been to this site 3 times, and obviously she's not
mhm,
finding what she's looking for. She hasn't checked out yet. So we can
yeah,
send targeted messages that like just follow up, just ask the question, right? And we have an opportunity where people are very used to automated messages,
mhm,
but they're not used to personalized automated messages that make sense with the timing. That's where there's really an opportunity to say, okay, if I follow it up within 15 minutes of them leaving the site, that's probably too soon. I need to be
mhm,
more cognizant of the time of day, what time zone they're in. Like there's a number of different things. Is this a long-term purchase? Like, do you have to think about this for a number of weeks, days, months, and what's going to be relevant? So with personalization, again, like all of the profile data is there. It's really important to focus on getting permission to email or SMS, and then you can really act on that and do that one-on-one conversation where you help them solve their problem, or have them remember you for next time if it's not the best fit
mhm.
right now. So that was a great question.
So, okay, and I bet this varies a little bit when it comes to B2B versus B2C. And I think you guys work with a lot of B2C brands, but let's talk about, and it might be an it depends sort of an answer that you give me, but let's talk about, are there, when you're thinking about personalization and the core things you should be looking at for a B2C brand
Mhm.
in terms of personalization, what does that look like? And then the core things for a B2B brand in terms of personalization, what does that look like?
Good
I
question.
know it's a big one, and this was not on our prep sheet. I'm sorry for doing
No,
this to
no, it's
you. No.
okay. No, I love this. I don't mind on the fly
You're a
questions at all.
professor. I figure it'll be fine.
Yeah, so for B2C, so to your one question, or sort of like alluding to, like, yes, we do work with B2C and B2B. It really depends. For personalization, I think there's a different perception of the automated messages I mentioned, right? So as a
Mhm,
consumer in the B2C space, you expect a cart abandonment email, or you expect this or that. And I think there is a gap where you can absolutely do those same things in a B2B space, because we're
mhm,
all regular, consumers, but we
mhm,
aren't necessarily seeing that same level of customization and engagement from a B2B. For B2B, in order to be scalable, you have to have some level of automation, right? When you're
mhm,
reaching a wider audience, but you need to take it that next level and, like, again, understand where they are
mhm,
in the buying process, and digging into some of those things. So on a profile level, you kind of called it. It will depend for a B2B business on what is it you're selling. Do you only have customer service Monday
mhm,
through Friday, 9 to 5? You don't want to send an email 8 hours later and no one's there to help and engage in that one-to-one. I would say there are a lot of tools now that are helpful in decision making for B2B, like Demo, where there's an opportunity where people can see it on their own time, especially if it's like a software, right? So they can see
mhm,
everything on their own time. So if you have an automated message that says, hey, like, just go check out this room, you can find all the resources you need, you can kind of peruse on your own and then follow up. Like, there are gaps that can be filled with automation. And again, looking at the profile on where they're at in the buying space, and what about them, what size company. Like, there are so many facets to a B2B deal. I was going to say there's a couple brands we work with that are both D2C and B2B, and I've seen a lot of
mm,
success in mirroring some of those images and, like, concepts and
mm,
campaigns. So,
mhm,
if we're launching a new product and you also have wholesalers, they absolutely want to know about that. They want to make sure it's on their shelf and they have the right tags and they
mhm,
have, that sort of education for them. Clearly, you'd want to get that information to them ahead of the launch to consumers. But a
mhm,
brand that I worked with, absolutely fabulous brand, they were sending a message every week with those sorts of highlights and
mm.
talking cards and just resources for their wholesalers, and they were ridiculously successful because they automated. They just planned ahead. They said, okay, we
Mhm.
know what's coming out, let's get the messages to our teams and go from
Yeah,
there.
cool, cool. I like that. There was something in particular that came to mind today that I think, I don't know, this one is interesting when you think about like touch points in B2B. So like let's say you've got a B2B subscription. So you're taking something that maybe you think normally as like a B2C type thing, like subscriptions, like my Netflix or my
Yeah, yeah.
Amazon Prime, or my subscribe and save, whatever it is. But you're putting that into like a software solution that's B2B. And this one was just top of mind. But like I personally think that sending people an email about your subscriptions about to renew is a really good practice, but so many people don't do that. But you see that in, like, I think my Amazon Subscribe and Save, I might be making this up, but I
No, no,
wanna
I've
say,
seen them.
like,
Yeah.
I get notifications that, like, my next order is coming soon. Do you still want it? Like, do you need it yet? That sort of a thing. For me, I think a lot of B2B brands probably look at, like, touch points like that and think, "Well, we don't want them to know. We just want the subscription to keep going." I don't know if you've heard this or not, but personally, I think from a brand loyalty and customer loyalty and satisfaction perspective, you should give people a heads up on those types of things. What are your thoughts on stuff like that? I know that, like,
I'm
went way out into left field,
no,
but
you are on it. I absolutely ag agree that there is a divide on this decision. And I've worked with
Mhm,
a number of brands. There's actually so Yapo offered subscription services and they are sunsetting that. And so now a lot of brands are looking at like moving to recharge. And I think some brands are looking at, just getting into this space for 2025. And so
mhm,
this is a critical decision to make. And it is made brand by brand. Do we tell people?
mhm.
Do we not tell people? Are we overwhelming our consumers with all these subscription related messages? And you do have the luxury of deciding as a brand,
Mhm,
yeah, we're going to send a 7-day reminder, a 5-day reminder, like, that you have to make those
mhm.
strategic decisions. The, gosh, so the decision is made by the brand. I would say there is a balancing act. If you don't send it and the consumer is not happy about it, you have to have your customer service team ready
Mhm.
and you need to understand
Yep.
the data associated with that on how many people have done that and how many people
Yeah,
are going to get publicly upset about this
yeah.
because like you said as a brand loyalty and customer service experience, like personally I would send the reminder. You are much better off having open communication and transparency. The brands that
Mhm.
have decided no, we don't want to do that, like I said, you really have an influx of negative customer experience, which is difficult to come back from, frankly.
Yeah,
And so when
yeah.
you are sending, messages about the subscription, there are a number of brands that do this really well. I couldn't possibly name them all today. I
Mhm.
will say Chewy is a great example of how they send
Mm.
out their messages related to orders, and it goes a long way, I would say. And you mentioned it, like the
Yeah.
Prime
Yeah,
updates, like
Chewy
they're
is a good one.
yes. Yeah, they do a fantastic job with their transactional messages, and that's what that falls under, right? It's a transaction. It's not,
Mhm,
you're not
mhm,
necessarily
mhm.
trying to get an upsell. You're not trying to like you are just communicating that this is coming up.
Yeah,
And it's so funny
yeah.
because I think they do a really good job where, you know, depending on your situation, you may not need another order of dog food yet, and you can push it out a
Mhm.
week and you get that
Right.
chance, right? Versus another 50-pound bag
Yes.
showing up at your door.
Yeah, other than, like it's like I, as a consumer, so appreciate the chance versus the, "Oh, I completely forgot a year ago that I signed up for an annual plan, and then all of a sudden, I open up my credit card bill one day, and I'm like, 'What's that?'" You
Yep.
know? "Oh, I don't need that anymore," or, "I
Yep.
wanna downgrade," or something like that. I think giving people the chance and, I just see more and more that this happens in the software space where, like, a lot of softwares are trying to, rightfully so, like, I think it's a good strategy, and we do it too. Like, "Hey, did you know you could save money on an annual
Yes.
plan?
Yep.
Great, pay up front, save money." But then you forget because a year is a long time, and so when you don't, and this just happened to me recently with a software I've been using for, years, and but actually had moved away from it over the course of the year and didn't need it anymore and forgot that
Mm.
I was on that annual renewal,
Yeah.
and now I'm trying to be like, "Hey, guys, I used y'all for, like, 5 years. Really? Like, you're not gonna help me out here on this thing?" Like,
Oh, yeah.
so and clearly, like, I haven't been using it, so, like, you can look
Oh,
at the
yeah.
data that, like, I'm not using
Thank you.
it.
Yes, that's
So
exactly. You know this isn't
yeah.
working out. I feel like you took advantage. What can we do here? And
Yeah,
then, yeah, if it falls on deaf ears, it's a really negative experience for sure. And I will say
it
that's
is.
sort of, then you again, if you're not sending the communication, you have to mitigate that relationship like situation.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you don't always have a customer service team that has access to that level of data. Candidly, like I've
Mhm.
seen that where it's like, I don't know enough about this person's profile. And so I've
Yeah.
worked with teams on that too, where it's like, why not? Like hand that list over, think about it ahead of there are some brands where it's like always on a specific day, they charge everybody.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
monthly club, right? Yep. And so you can
Yeah.
handle the customer service even with that renewal email where you have an influx of cancellations,
Right.
you could reach out to all those people. We've done great
Yeah.
research with those people. I'm like, why are you canceling? Oh, well, I didn't like what was in the last
Mm.
box. I think it cost too much
Yeah.
money. I, just don't even live there anymore. Like, oh no. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they're
Yeah.
shipping to who knows where. So yeah, and I
Well, I
agree with
think
you.
it's a lot more. Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just I agree with you on the B2B space where these things are on
Mhm.
autopilot and it's just
Yeah.
not as personal. And that's,
Mhm.
like I said before, an opportunity for sure. We can do more as businesses to other businesses.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a missed opportunity from a brand perspective. I think it's a miss, but I also think that you could potentially end up spending more money on having a large customer service team, that
Mm,
like a larger customer service team than you really need if you just like, because I imagine a lot of these companies actually devote a lot of time and man hours to like customer service around refunds and stuff when they're doing it this way, especially, and I'm talking about the ones that are like, let's call them like $200 or $300 a year renewals,
mm,
like not these huge things,
mhm.
but like, so anyhow, I digress, but I think that that's something that's really interesting to think about when you're thinking about life cycle and touch points with
Absolutely.
customers, whether it's B2B or B2C, like have the conversation about this is your thank you for being a customer. Heads up. Here's what's coming.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do. So let's kind of wrap it up. We got a few more minutes. I want to talk really quickly with you about just like building momentum, how to sustain momentum throughout the year. And then I want to finish it off with your favorite life cycle campaign that you've ever implemented and
Oh
why.
my goodness. Okay. That's a good one. I'll think about that while I answer your
Yeah.
your question about momentum. So you had started to ask about how did Q4 go? And I think that's a really good sort of setup for how to keep
Yeah.
momentum going. In
Hmm.
Q4, so we really dug into the data from 2023, and it was interesting because we could see a clear, and I should give some context. So we looked at all of the beauty brands with email data that we had available, and we were looking for trends in the way that purchase behind like buying behavior was going in
Hmm.
2023 for Q4, and we definitely were able to back up the hypothesis that the weeks after Christmas are definitely different. So you truly have that shopper fatigue. Things do kind of come back up when you see,
Hmm.
like the holidays have wrapped up. Now people are kind of buying for themselves again. But leading up to Christmas, it
Hmm.
kind of slows down. Like we found all the data to back these things up. I will say that this year there's definitely sentiment about everything was more expensive in the ads side of the house, right?
Hmm.
Because of current events and things that were going on. So
Hmm.
the noise level was definitely elevated, right? You had to cut through that with your budget in order to get into the space.
Mhm.
Thankfully, for email and SMS, things were pretty level, I would say. It's not like pricing changes for email and SMS. I do
Yeah.
know that it is a very competitive period in the inbox or on the phone. And we do see higher unsubscribe and like opt out rates in Q4 generally. Like everyone is getting everything from everyone, especially this past year. So keeping the momentum going, we do have solid data for every brand coming out of Q4, whether it's from 2024 or 2023, a non-election year. There's information that you can understand if they're shopping for other people or if they're shopping for themselves. You can see the difference in the
Mhm.
buying behavior, and that gives you sort of a launch pad to look at other gifting holidays and think through, okay, what kind of messaging would I put in front of this person? Is this person a heavy spender? And is it in, like I said, that realm of like, okay, I'm buying this for someone else versus a regular
Mhm.
user, right? And so
Mhm.
it it takes time to build out the segments, but usually what I do when I work with a new brand is audit all their data and look for some of those key things
Mhm.
like high LTV, so high lifetime value, how many purchases have they
Mhm.
made, how much time goes on between purchases. So if you have, like I said, if you have those people that
Mhm.
are regularly buying versus those people that are like stacking up once, twice, 3 times a year. And
Mhm.
when it comes to the campaigns for that, you, like I said, you can look at the gifting seasons, but for products that aren't super giftable, now you can kind of understand who are your discount shoppers. Like, yep, they
Mhm.
buy Black Friday, that's it. And then if you have a semi-annual sale or if you have your own birthday sale, like it's the birthday of the company,
Mhm.
you can dig into those sorts of things. It doesn't have to always be a discount either. It could be free shipping over
Mhm.
a certain amount. It could be extra loyalty
Mhm.
points during this period. It could be early access to something new. Like there's plenty of opportunities
Mhm.
to keep things exciting and new during the year without making up a holiday.
Yeah, yeah. And I would think even like B2B brands can do similar things, it's not quite the same with like, always, but I do think that there are ways to say sort of like, "Hey, like to the annual pricing, did you know that if you renewed at an annual, you could save?" So, like, I think there's discounting moves and things that people can make, particularly around kind of that sort of a play for B2B. And I love your examples for B2C, more oriented
Yeah.
brands.
I was gonna say for B2B, and B2C, the behavioral triggers, like your audience will tell you where their sweet spot
Mm,
is, how often they wanna hear from you, just based on the data. You will see, the ebbs and flows of reactions, of opens, clicks, purchases. And in
yeah.
B2B, yeah, I like your call out about the renewal or the savings. You could certainly set
Mhm.
that up and again, more behavioral based, like, okay, 6 months from renewal or based on their usage, right? If I notice Taylor's never logging in,
Yeah.
then what can we do about that? And what I've really wanted to drive home with internal and external teams when working on a brand is whether it's B2B or B2C, um, I would say even more so with B2B is to have dashboards and data available to look at
Mm,
that sort of
mhm, mm,
information, right? If you see a significant drop off and you're hearing about a competitor taking over the space, you have to jump on that and look at what are
yeah,
some opportunities to re-engage people. Definitely have done a lot of work with surveys, and you'd be surprised what kind of things come out of that. And I would
mhm,
say I get some pushback where what if nobody answers? Incentivize it. It
yeah,
doesn't take much to get a reaction from people and find out more about them. Again, being in the digital space, you don't have to like go knock on their door. It's not a huge lift to
yeah,
send something out, virtually and get them to give you their feedback, especially in B2B.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Alright, rapid fire, favorite life cycle campaign?
You know what's funny? The first one that came to mind, um, okay, let's see. So I worked with Pure Vita bracelets for 5 years, and there
Mhm,
were so many campaigns, just absolutely fabulous campaigns. The designs were beautiful. Uh, there's there's actually 2 that came to mind. So the first one was Worth the Scroll, and so there was
mm,
this sort of like long, like they make these beautiful string bracelets, and so it was just this long email
mhm,
where all of these bracelets had been laid out and you'd scroll down it, and it was just a beautiful email, super fun. They have so many products, and that is a cool trend that I just don't see as often anymore, where it's this long scroll sort of
yeah,
email, and it is super fun, totally worth it. um, my One of my favorite campaigns was also a bee focused, like pollinator awareness campaign that we did.
mm,
And they're just beautiful little bracelet. And it was about supporting pollinators. I actually took a pollinator certification course through MSU, Michigan State University, and I just loved that campaign. It did really well, like in terms of revenue, and it was just super fun to think about, the concept and the creative that went along with it because it wasn't it's not like a top selling bracelet, but it's just adorable with a little bee,
yeah,
and it was fun to work on.
that's awesome. I love it, like, just good creative ideas, sometimes are the things that, do get the attention, stop the scroll, and make people have a little, smile, a little fun with it. Well,
Mhm.
Lisa, it's been really fun. I think this has been a fantastic conversation. I've learned a lot from you. If people want to get in touch and learn more about working with Blue Wheel Media or find you online, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, great question. So I would say Blue Wheel Media, bleh. bluewheelmedia.com is the best place to learn more about Blue Wheel. And you can find me on LinkedIn, just linkedin.com/Lisa Wendland. Oh, sorry,
Awesome.
linkedin.com/in/ I'll say that
Slash
again for
in.
you. Yeah.
That slash in thing. It's a lot.
linkedin.com/in/Lisa Wendland.
Slash in. I miss it every time. Well, Lisa, it's really been a pleasure, and I've had a great time. I hope this was helpful for you marketers out there if you were thinking about how to just, think about life cycle marketing, approach it, what are some different things you can do in it, and we'll see you next time on another episode of Talking Shizzle.